Ah, yes, good old Arch Linux. A lot of Linux beginners think that Arch Linux is extremely difficult to install and restricted for the most experienced Linux users in existence, but really it's not. It's just time consuming and annoying, sort of. The actual installation process is extremely easy, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to install Arch Linux with a desktop environment. Let's go. So first, obviously, you need to download an ISO and make a virtual machine or just flash it onto a USB drive and boot from it onto a real computer. You should practice in a VM just so that you don't screw anything up before installing it on real hardware. And yeah, I am on a VM. I would do it on physical hardware, but I don't really have any available. So the first step is to connect to the internet. This is pretty simple if you are on a wired connection or a VM. If I just type ping archlinux.org, it's already connected. However, if you need Wi-Fi, the IWCTL command is there, and I don't really know how to use this that much. I believe it's list device list. Yeah, device list, and it'll show you your adapters. Then I think you can use station scan. Well, device is not found, and then station connect Wi-Fi network, and then it'll ask for the password. But I'm on a VM, so I don't have Wi-Fi. I recommend that you do use a wired connection because it will go a lot faster. So now this is just something to speed up the process. You can rank your mirrors by fastest. So is the rank mirrors command included? No, it's not. I believe the command is pacman -sy pacman-contrib. I believe that's it. So first, we're going to copy the pacman mirror list over to a backup file because there's really nothing worse than having your pacman mirror screwed up, especially when you don't have a browser or a graphical environment. So cp/etsy/pacman.d/mirrorlist2 /etsy pacman.d/mirrorlist.backup. And now rank mirrors /etsy/pacman.d/mirrorlist to etsy pacman.d/mirrorlist. Okay. File is empty. I'm gonna try that again. I replaced the mirror list with mirrorlist.backup. So this may take a while depending on your internet speed and also how many entries are in the mirror list. But just wait for this to be done. And it's done. So I can run pacman-sy, and it should be a lot faster installing the system now. So the first step, which is probably the hardest step, is to partition your drives. This is very dangerous, and you need to be very careful when doing this. So always remember to back up any data that is on the drive. Follow the 3-2-1 rule, do all that stuff. Keep your data safe. So the command to do this is cfdisk. This is my preferred disk partitioning utility for the command line. And first we need to list our disks. So lsblk. As you can see, we have 3 devices. However, it's usually VDA or VD, starting with VDSD, HD, or NVMe. Now, if you have an NVMe drive, you do not want to make this big mistake. There might be 2 things, NVMe 0 and NVMe 0 and 1. You do not want to pick NVMe 0 or whatever number it is, because that's like your entire NVMe controller, and that would be bad. So I'm going to be using VDA. It's the only one here. So cfdisk/dev/VDA. Now select the label type. This confuses some users. However, if you know a lot about low-level stuff in the computer, you may know what this is. Basically, your partition table can be of type GPT or MBR, also known as DOS. GPT runs on newer systems, so if you have an older system which runs legacy BIOS, then you will need to use DOS or MBR. However, GPT, I recommend that you do use GPT, and also you will need to use GPT if your storage drive has 2 terabytes or more storage. This is a VM, so I have to use DOS, so I'll select that. We'll create a new partition, and I will give it 256 megabytes. This will be our boot partition. I will be using Grub for my bootloader. If you're using a more bloated bootloader or running multiple kernels, you may want to allocate more storage. Keep in mind that you cannot change the size of your boot partition later on without having to do a lot of data moving around stuff. So this will be primary. On DOS, you will have to press the B key to enable the boot flag. However, if you are using GPT, you go to type and find EFI system. I believe that's what it is. Yeah, EFI system. And then I'll create a new one. And I'll just give it the rest of the space, primary. And this will be our data drive. You can also create additional partitions for things like swap your home data, maybe. A home partition is very useful if you're going to be distro hopping or installing multiple distributions, because then you don't need to copy files all the time. So we'll write these changes to the disk, type yes, and then quit. So now if I run lsblk, we can see that 2 new partitions have appeared in VDA. So now it's time to format the partitions. mkfs.ext4/dev/VDA2. This is our data partition. Do that for all of your data partitions. And, well, actually, I should call this the root partition, but do it for every partition except the boot partition. Now, if you are using DOS, you can use ext4 for the boot partition. However, this is very important. If you're on GPT, you'll need to run mkfs.fat-f32 and your boot partition. And I believe in order to do that, you'll need pacman-s DOSFS tools. Oh, it's already included with the ISO, but just install that just in case. Now it's time to mount the partitions. So first, mount /dev/VDA2. This is my root partition to /mnt. You can really mount it anywhere, but I'm going to use /mnt. And then mount --mkdir, your boot partition, to /mnt/boot. Now, if I ls/mnt, well, there's nothing there except the boot thing. So now it's time to actually install the packages that we will need for a functioning system. So the command to do that is pacstrap. Now this basically just installs your system for you. So pacstrap-k/mnt, this is where you mounted your drive. Base devel package contains things like compilers and various development tools. This will be important if you plan to use the AUR and just building things from source. And then we need to pick a kernel. So you can install multiple kernels if you'd like. I'll just use the standard Linux kernel. They also have Linux LTS. Or you could just build the kernel from a source. And then we also need firmware, Linux firmware. Now everything will automatically install. Depending on your internet speed, this may be a very quick process or take a long time. Sit back and relax and wait for it to all be ready. So, it has finished installing, and as you can see at the bottom, it says it took 2 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm not sure why, but I think my VM internet is completely horrible, broken something. I don't know what's happening. My internet's really fast, but not on the VM for some reason. So now we need to generate the fs tab. So I can type genfs tab /mnt. Now I'm going to point out a mistake that some users may make. As you can see, the UUID is commented out, and instead we're using the drive name to VDA 1 and 2. This is terrible because let's say that you mounted it on SDB, and then suddenly your SDA drive fails. Well, that SDB drive on your next boot could switch over to being SDA, which would be terrible. So instead, we can add -u, and the UUID is unique and never changes. So now we can add that into /mnt/etc/fs tab. Perfect. So now we're going to change root into that new system. This can be done with the arch-chroot command and /mnt. And now the prompt just changed, and if I ls, this is a pretty familiar file structure. That's because we're actually inside the new system. So you may want to install a package for your text editor, such as Nano or Vim or whatever you use. I'll use Nano since it's very simple. You don't need something like super good, you just need something that works. So you need to select your time zone, so ln-sf/user/share/zone info. Then you select your region. So I'll select America, and then I'm in Eastern time, so I'll do New York, and /etc/local time. Then HW clock --sys to HC. So this will set your time zone to wherever you live. If you're not sure which Unix time zone you are in, then go on Wikipedia. I'm pretty sure there's a giant table of every time zone and the regions that they cover. So if you're unsure, you can look that up. Now it's time to generate our locale. So we can type locale-gen. Then nano/etsy/locale.conf. Now I can type lang equals en_us.utf-8. And if you do not speak US English, then you would set it to your locale. So I can save this. And now we can set a host name. So nano/etsy/hostname, and I'll set it to Arch Linux VM. You can set this to literally anything you want. I believe it cannot have spaces in it. Now I can type mkinit cpio-p. This will create a new init ramfs, and image generation was successful. You may be able to see these possibly missing firmware for module warnings. This is fine. Just if there's any errors, you may want to research that. Now we have to set a password. So the command is passwd. I'll set my very secure password. And now the root user password has been set. We can also create a new user because you can't actually build AUR packages on the root user, and it's a lot nicer to have your own account instead of you just using root. It's also quite dangerous because every app is running as root. So the command to do that is user add -m-s/bin/bash. This is the shell that your user will have. If you would not like to use bash and instead something like zsh or whatever shell you'd like, then put that here. -g wheel storage power, and then finally your username. I'll put sid, then pass wd sid. I'll set my very secure password again. And now let's install some additional packages that we might need. So these packages are grub, EFI boot mgr, and network manager. So grub is our bootloader. EFI boot manager is required if you're using GPT, and network manager is if you want to have internet on, like after booting, because it's not very nice to have no internet after booting. So we can install grub-install, and you can just run this as is if you're using DOS. However, you'll need to add --target equals x86_64 -EFI -directory equals /boot if you are using GPT. I'm not, so grub install. Actually, no. Grub install -dev/VDA. Just VDA. No VDA1, no VDA2. Installation finished, no error reported. That's good. grub-mkconfig-o/boot/grub.cfg. And before I run this, you may actually want to edit your grub config. This can be found at /etc/default grub, I believe. So one thing you should probably remove is this quiet part, because if it's quiet, it can be a lot more difficult to debug. So I'll save this and run the command. And if you don't have any errors, that's all good. So now we'll enable the network manager, systemctl enable network manager. The capitalization is necessary. And then you should have internet upon booting. Another thing, you need to make sure that the wheel group has sudo privileges. So export editor equals /bin/nano. And actually, if nano is your preferred editor, you want to go into what's in the home directory. Okay, nano/home/sid/.bashrc. And at the end, you want to put export editor equals /bin/nano, or whatever your preferred text editor is. Now I can type vi-sudo, and we can edit the sudoers file. You should never, ever, ever edit the actual sudoers file directly through your text editor, because the vi-sudo command actually checks for any issues before applying the changes, because if you happen to screw up in the vi-sudo command, things can get bad, like really bad. So somewhere here, oh yes, okay. So this line, uncomment to allow members of the group wheel to execute any command. We need to uncomment this line. Now the same thing without a password. You can uncomment this line instead of the previous one. However, it is a dangerous thing because a malicious application can gain elevated privileges without a password, which is extremely dangerous. So we'll save this and close out of it. And now it's time to install a graphical environment. The first step is installing Xorg. I will not be showing you how to install Wayland anything because I don't use Wayland. I just don't use it. So pacman-s Xorg. Okay, so Xorg has been installed. Now we need a display manager, also known as a login screen. Pacman-s. You can use either one, LightDM or SDDM. So for SDDM, just type SDDM. For LightDM, I will use that LightDM, and you need a greeter. I'll choose the LightDM GTK greeter. LightDM will not work and will boot to the TTY if you do not install a greeter. We can now install a desktop environment. There are 3 main choices: GNOME, KDE, Plasma, and XFCE. I'm personally a fan of XFCE, so I'll install that, XFCE4. And if you want XFCE4 goodies, XFCE4 goodies is an extremely large package, so I'm not going to install it because I only have a couple gigabytes. So this may take a while. And we need to enable the login screen. So I'll enable LightDM or SDDM. And now I want to install an XFCE customization. So I'm going to use the symmetrical OS customization. So I'll nano/etsy/pacman.conf and add this repository. So symos sig level equals optional trust all server equals https://symmetrical os.github.io/packages/architecture. Then it's pacman-s. Okay. pacman-s symos-xfce4 default. And this will install. So now this won't install if you've already created your user. Actually, will it? /ls home sid. Okay, yeah. So copy /etsy/skel /.config to /home/sid/.config. Oh, okay. I need to put -r ls home sid.config. Oh, okay, no, that's bad. I'll just remove that star. How do I get it to copy? This is honestly embarrassing that I don't know how to copy a directory. Okay, so I finally did it. So now I'm pretty sure we're done. So I'll press Control-D to exit chroot. And umount-r/mnt, this just unmounts the drives. And finally, shut down. Shut down now. Don't wait until it just booted right back up. Okay. So now we have a graphical login, and XFCE session is what I'll use. And perfect. These missing things, these are like Firefox, I think. And yeah, we have a working system. So you can install a browser. So now we have a browser, and you can browse the web on your brand new Arch Linux system. However, more importantly, like way more importantly, sudo pacman-s neofetch. And now, get ready, run the command neofetch. Take a screenshot and frame it, put it on your wall, invite all of your friends over, and brag to them about how you just installed Arch Linux.